never really connected with the river, to be honest. I think it's because I'm an ocean guy. I grew up in the ocean, clear water. But now I'm a bit older, I've sort of found I'm a bit more interested in things like history, exploring it, connecting with it. And this is one of the reasons why I'm doing this series. So this will be a multi-part series called The River. I hope you guys have joined me for the trip. So we're about 10 kilometres north of Mannum, which is now a tourist town, but used to be one of the big steamboat ports. And we've paddled part of the way here, you can't get here by car, to this old ruin. This is where we're going to be hunting today, but first let's get into some more history about the river itself. So the Darling and the Murrumbidgee flow into the Murray, and the Murray then flows all the way through into the ocean down in Galway. Now the interesting thing is though, is that the collective basin area, so everywhere the water collects from, is 4 times the size of the UK and collects all into this one river, which is pretty amazing. And you've got about 5,400 kilometres worth of waterways, and a lot of those, depending on the time of the year, can be navigated. So the basin itself has been here for a long period of time, but the Murray's changed its face a few times. They think that the current iteration, how it looks now, is about 16,000 years old, somewhere in around there. The local indigenous people have been living on this river for way longer than that. So all along its length, there have been many cultures, and they've been there for such a long time that the river has entwined itself into their stories. We can see some of that down below in the descriptions. I've put some links there to some of the Dreamtime stories, which I think warrant a view, so check them out. They're really kind of cool. The Europeans discovered the Murray. No idea what sort of bird that is. That's cool. So Europeans found the river in 1824, and that was Hamilton Hume and William Hovell. Now they named the river at that point the Hume River, which is kind of egocentric, but is what was done at the time. It wasn't until a little bit further down the track that Captain Charles Sturt in about 1830 actually put a serious amount of effort into exploring the riverways. He went from the Murrumbidgee up in New South Wales right through to Galway, which is the mouth of the river, which was a huge expedition back in the 1830s. Sturt named the river the Murray after George Murray, who was the Secretary of the Colonies at that point in time, which was quite an honour, I would imagine. And of course it still sticks today. What Charles Sturt really did though was that he opened up Australia. He found a ready-made highway that was sitting here. There weren't the towns, there was no easy way to get between point A and point B in Australia. Obviously there was no roads. So to find the river here meant that the opportunity now presented itself for people to move inland, have a water supply, and be able to farm and have stock. So there were great hopes around what it meant to actually prove that the river was navigable. It's not to say though that there weren't challenges. You know, Australia conditions were harsh and the river levels fluctuated a lot. There was no easy way, I mean even though the river was there now, there was still no easy way to get a huge amount of stores and stocks up and down the river. You know, the infrastructure hadn't been built at this point. A gentleman by the name of William Randall, who was the son of a local pastoralist, decided in early 1853 that after seeing how the technology had matured to put steamboat engines into these shallow draft ships, that he was going to build one. Lo and behold, less than 12 months later, he launched the Mary Ann. And that was Australia's first paddle steamer. Now, to start off with, he thought, well, we'd better investigate the river and check out, you know, where we can go and where we can't. So they set off on a trip heading upstream. But unfortunately, at the time of the year, the water levels were really low, and he actually bottomed out and couldn't go any further than about 200 kilometres upstream. He got stuck. So they floated the boat back off of the sandbar, brought it back home again. A little bit later in the year, he tried again. And this time, due to more water in the river system, he actually made it all the way to where Port Echuca is now. So the Marianne was the first steamer, but very quickly there were tons of other ships working up and down the Murray River, and it really opened up the areas in between the ports that had been established. So with that influx of people, they were now living along the riverbanks where it was quite fertile land. So with navigable routes now set up on the river, it meant that settlers could come into these areas and they could work along the banks, they could have farms, they could produce things and trade. And that's the reason why I've chosen this particular spot to hunt, because this old girl that's been sitting here for a while is directly from that era. It's a ruin now, but this house was a home. They had a family living here, and they would have had hopes and dreams pretty well exactly the same as what we do. And the challenge is to see this place as it was and not as it is. I can hunt around this property and find an item that belonged to these people, and it gives me a direct and tactile reference to them. It helps me build an image in my mind, and hopefully in yours, about what life would have been like here in this beautiful spot, quite remote. If I can remember the past, if I can bring it back to life again and give it to you as well, then I feel like I'm achieving something, and hopefully that has some meaning. So let's get into it. Let's hunt some history. I'm sure there's something here waiting for me to find. I'm going to pull it out of the ground, and then we'll be able to find out what that item is and do some history on that as well. Let's get into it. To 59. That is a nice target number. Still in there. See if we can't hear it with the pinpointer. Got there, a bit of glass. Hope the sheepies stay away from that. Unfortunately, there it is there. It's a harmonica reed. Very cool. Everybody used to play the harmonicas out here. Yep, that's the one. I'll push him back into there. Very cool. It's unusual to find them in one piece as well. A spoon. It's been in here a while, obviously. What a great little start. This is definitely something that these people would have been using right up until the day they left. And I would say the day they left probably would have been the big floods. So I've got a bit on that in a later episode. I had some massive floods here where I'm sitting. I was way underwater, but we'll get to that. That's a beautiful old spoon. I'm going to clean this right up. We'll have a bit of more of a look at it when we get home. That's awesome. A very high number. Shotgun shell. Yeah. That is a big old buckle. Beautiful. Wow. Whew. Getting warm out here. Could only imagine what it would be like out here. I mean, it's late December now, so it's about 32, 33 degrees, but the temperature out here during January and February would regularly go over 40 degrees. It would have been harsh, to say the least. At least you got a river to go for a swim in. What do we got here? Let's have a look. And you can even see the thorns on the roses. Just there by that yellow rock. Just in here somewhere. Oh, guys, it's another, this is not a normal one. Oh, look at this. Hey, hang on. What the hell have we got here? God, these dry conditions out here do so well with these. Okay, so we've got an old button, but it's got the oh, I'm shaking. It's got the crown on it, an SA. That means this is part of some maybe uniform or, oh, is there any names on it? I'm gonna have to clean this up and have a close look. No, it doesn't look like there's any name. It doesn't. Usually they'd have a name written on them, but we'll have to do some more investigation into this. It's been an awesome day, guys. So rounding it off with this little button here, I'm gonna have to find out what this is, but I'm pretty darn sure that's going to be some sort of government button. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna pack up here, I'm gonna head home, I'm gonna clean up all these targets, and I'm gonna do some research on those. So stick around, we're gonna find out what these things are. Honestly, that was an awesome weekend. This first episode's going to be interesting, but guys, tune in for the next episode as well. I have found some absolutely amazing stuff about this property. So as a bit of a bonus, guys, we've got Mark 1 eyeball gear, which tends to be glass. I love it when I can find these intact. So we've got a little jar here. It's probably just had some spice or something along those lines in there. I'll do some research, see whether I can find out anything that might indicate what was in there. There's no names, brand marks, nothing. It's a very plain bottle. We've got this guy, which has a clear panel here and then rough riffles all the way around, almost like it was meant to throw light in a certain direction. My partner, my wife, believes that this might have been a candle holder, but I'm not so sure because one, there's no wax on it, and two, it's a bit chunky. I don't know. It doesn't seem quite right. We'll do some research here though, and maybe contact the Coffee Bush Kid, see whether he's got an idea about what this might be. And then the last one, we've got a Bidomac, which is really interesting. So this is circa about 1920, 1930. So it's spelt B-I-D-O-M-A-K, Bidomac. And we've got written on the bottle here, the property of the Douglas Drug Company, Australia. So apparently they get to keep property ownership of their bottles. Maybe they reuse them, I'm not sure. On the side here, we've got the tonic. It's not tonic, it's the tonic, guys. This bottle contained ferrous sulfate, which was classed as a body, brain, and nerve builder. Goodness knows whether it was good for you or not, but I'm going to look that up shortly and give you the lowdown on it. Sounds kind of dangerous to me. So we've got some pretty special stuff in the treasure box here, guys. Of course, today we're just going to be doing the spoon, the buckles, and also the little button. See what we can find out about those. So we've got 4 items left in the treasure box, guys. We're going to go through those. I've got a feeling this is going to stretch out into episode 3 or 4 because this is quite a story that gets up and gets going. Let's go and clean these items up and then do some research onto what they are. It's the worst of it off. Very cool. This is a nickel spoon. If this was silver, I wouldn't be treating it this harshly. Now I'll just, yeah, no, I'm kidding. That's coming up awesome. Thinking that's it.
So as you can see, guys, all of these targets have cleaned up really, really well. I'm looking forward to fitting the center steel piece onto this so then I can start using this buckle myself. I love it. It's just got so much history to it and it will remind me of my first history hunt video. So that's kind of cool. This little button, I'm not going to find any more information on it. There's no hallmarks or anything, and I haven't been able to find it in any of the Australian button sort of registry groups. You have to excuse me, I've got COVID at the moment, so I'm a bit croaky. It did clean up really well, and after doing some more research on the property from something that comes up in the next episode, I've actually found the owner of the property, and I know why this, I've got a pretty good idea why this button was actually there. Because of some of the other items that I found, I believe that the gentleman that owned the property was a council member at Manham for a great many years. Now, this may have been gifted to him by the state government in recognition to his service, or it may have been simply that he was a patriot and he liked wearing this sort of stuff to show his support and his patriotism of South Australia and Australia in general. It's a great little piece, but I'm probably not going to get any more information out of this per se. The last bit that I cleaned up, obviously, was the spoon. Now, the great thing about these, which I've always wondered about, which I've now researched and found out why in the heck a mid-1800s, 1850, 1860 onwards, electroplated nickel spoon would have so many hallmarks on the back of them. I could never work it out. Why would somebody spend so much time putting all these hallmarks on there on something which was silver plated and basically worth nothing? Of course, if you were well off in that era, you would have proper silver spoons with maybe gold gilding and things like that on them, and they would have the hallmarks on the back to reflect that. But it didn't make any sense why this one would have all these hallmarks. So, if you're at Sunday tea and you've just put your sugar in your cup and you flip the spoon over and you see all these little hallmarks on the back, what's your first impression? Your first impression is, oh my goodness, the Joneses are doing quite well. They've got silver spoons. Because you visually couldn't tell that it was a nickel spoon because it was plated, right? So really, it was just ego and hubris. And the companies that were making these cheap spoons once this technology for electroplating came around realised that it would make their spoon more popular by putting the hallmarks on the back, because everybody would buy it, because anybody would think that those people then that have purchased it are doing really, really well. So it's an ego spoon. And of course it was on forks and knives and all that sort of jazz as well, but absolutely unbelievable. Now of course the key here is that when you flip it over, if you were sitting there, you couldn't read the hallmarks, they're too small. On the original ones, which are proper silver, the hallmarks are much larger, and you would probably be able to Mark 1 eyeball those and actually see them. So there's a great little piece of history about why these particular spoons have all these hallmarks. Coming up in the second episode of The River, we've got some amazing finds which actually tell me exactly who lived at this property. It expands out this story phenomenally, and I'm not sure where it's going yet. It may actually end up being that I meet with some of the family members of this gentleman that lived at this property who still live in the area. He's got quite a large family now. All right, guys, I'll see you next time.